That guy right there has a heart for the local church. Not only locally for jobs that they could potentially have or help churches that are in his backyard, but nationally and across the globe. He actually started that National Association of Church Design Builders that I spoke about yesterday. So Dave, thanks for being here this morning. Are you guys ready? Because we're going to cover a lot of ground in just a few short minutes. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. You may want to take your notepads out, some pens, because these are going to be some questions that we're not going to be able to talk about today. But I'd love to see you take these questions down, jot them down, and maybe think about them over the next several weeks. And so in preparations for today, I do get the honor and the privilege of traveling around North Carolina and Virginia and sit down with a lot of pastors, leaders, volunteers, all of that. And I just simply ask questions. And today I want to talk about two things, and you're gonna know when I mention these things how broad it is and how quick we're gonna move through it. Okay, so we're just brushing the surface here today. So I ask a lot of questions. I try to get a lot of challenging questions. You know, the first E in the E team is engage. I want to really know what's going on. What is God calling me to? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the things, the deficiencies? What are some of the things that you're going to need so we can engage? Not that we have all the answers, but we try to connect you with people that potentially can in your spot, in your space, in your community, not that you have to travel an hour down the road to get it. And so I ask a lot of questions. One of the questions, this is the one I like to ask often, and it's so funny because sometimes, you know, you kind of have to, when you're asking questions, you guys know this because you're great leaders, you kind of have to feel the room, you got to feel the conversation, right? And so I don't ask this all the time, but when I do, I always get eyebrows that raise, and it's this. If you could change one thing about the church today, your church, your community, what would it be? If you can change one thing today about the church, what would it be? What are some things? Just throw them out really quick. Off the cuff, what is it? What would you change today? Your church, your community, not the big C church, local church. Anyone? Just want to see if we hit the top two. Anyone?
More young people.
More young people? Anyone else?
More safe people.
More safe people?
Anyone? More people living on mission.
More people living on mission?
Less complacency.
Less complacency. Those are good. Let me tell you the top two. I was wondering if we were going to hit them. The top two, number one, by far, discipleship. By far. The response is discipleship. Number two are volunteer teams. We need more teams. We need more people. We need more, you know. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about a volunteer leadership culture and how to disciple within, because I feel like we're missing a great opportunity. So I'm going to be sharing some personal experiences, but those are the things we're going to talk about. A great leader of mine always kind of reminds me of this. He reminded me of this the other night. And it's kind of, you guys probably know this, but 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. And in a lot of churches, it may be 10%. And so volunteer cultures are huge. And so Sam Chan, which is famous author, leader, he made these two statements, these two quotes, I think we have them here. He says this: the strongest force in an organization is not the vision or strategy, it's the culture within that holds all the other components. And then this next one really hits you. Toxic culture is like carbon monoxide. You don't see it, smell it, you just wake up dead. Our churches, our communities have a culture. And it starts with our volunteers. Why? Because they're the front lines. They're the people that they see first coming through our doors. So we're going to jump right in. Chris, you said this yesterday. You said healthy churches plant healthy churches. But what if we're not healthy? Because there's a lot of unhealthy churches planting unhealthy churches. And so let's dive in. All right. Jesus models this in Luke chapter 9. And I think we got the Passion's translation. We're just going to read this because he lays this out. There's going to be 5 things that we're going to hit on in volunteer cultures. And he lays this out. It says, Jesus summoned Some translation says asked. Some translation says called. Together, his 12 disciples, and imparted. He gave to them authority over every demon and every power to heal every disease. Then he commissioned them to proclaim God's kingdom and to heal the sick, to demonstrate that the kingdom had arrived. And he sent them out. He gave them these instructions. Take nothing extra on your journey. Just go as you are. Don't carry a staff, a backpack, food, money, not even a change of clothes. Just wear your volunteer shirt. Whatever home welcomes you as a guest, remain there and make it your base of ministry. And whatever your ministry is rejected, you are to leave that town and shake the dust off your shoes as a testimony before them. The apostles departed and went into the villages with the wonderful news of God's kingdom, and they healed diseases wherever they went. There's a lot to unpack in that. We're going to highlight 5 things that he does. I've titled this Healthy Volunteer Cultures. Number 1, he selected them. Here's some of the questions I want to ask you. What's your selection process look like? Are people in the seats aware of every opportunity within your community to serve? Do they have a clear next step? Do they know how to get involved? And you guys know this, Jesus modeled that the greatest way to grow a volunteer culture is by personal invitation. Let me give you a little bit of testimony. So I have an incredible story that I got a chance to be a part of. We launched a church in the Wahlberg area of the Triad, if you guys know that, near Winston-Salem. And we started about a year out. And a year out, we started developing our teams, small groups, kind of started on that. Leading up to it, about 4 months to it, we had a preview service into the community, just kind of let the community know what it was all about, that kind of thing. And the first service, I walk out on stage to lead worship, and there's about 550 people. And I'm like, we are in trouble. At that time, we had 2 full-time staff people. I was volunteer. Most of our volunteers were volunteer. All of our volunteers, there's no paid staff. And then fast forward, a couple years, things are going great. We're meeting in schools. We're growing. And the volunteer culture was incredible. That's percentage statistic I gave you, 20% doing 80% of work. We had 90% of people serving. It was phenomenal. You see that early on in church planting where they see the need. People see the need, so they get involved. And it's easy because you got all kinds of things going on. Then we moved into a facility. We were excited, right? I think we moved like $3.4 million facility, something around that. That's my executive pastor in the back of the room. Everything I know and I'm sharing today came from this guy. He's one of the greatest leaders I know. We get into the facility. We feel like we're somebody. We're pushing around 1,600. We got things under control. We're good. Things are great. What happened? People started to leave. Why? We always did kind of an exit interview type of thing. I would sit down and be like, these are people that were like bought in. And I would just ask them, so what's going on? And I would get this response a lot of the time. It's not the same church. I'm speaking out of someone who's been a part of volunteer cultures for many years, had an opportunity to be full-time for 5.5. I've been the one overlooked. I've been the one taken advantage of. Got into leadership. Now I was the one overlooking. I was the one taking advantage. And I have a passion and burden because the ones that we create opportunities and provide opportunities for the Lord to use, when they're on our team, we forget about them. I don't know why, but we do. Number 2, he instructed them. Here's some questions I want to ask you. Do you have clear expectations and standards when someone steps up and raises a hand? Do they understand the clear why, the vision of what they're doing? Do they understand the mission, the how and the what? What are they signing up for? What's the time commitment? How often are they serving? And I think it was Aaron yesterday talked about that scorecard. Let me ask you this. Are you celebrating wins? What are the wins that you're celebrating and communicating to your teams? Number 3, he sent them out. He released them. Lead pastors, executive pastors, leaders in the room. Have you truly released your leaders? Or are you holding on to some control? Are you leading with a closed hand or an open hand? Are you okay with someone doing things a little bit different than how you would? They talk about church planning and networking. Someone said this yesterday and I thought it was huge. Are you okay with sending your most gifted leader, your most gifted volunteers to another church? This worship team's incredible. Chris, are you willing to send them to other churches? Obviously, yeah, they're here with us and sharing their gifts and abilities. That's a big one, right? Are we able to really, where the rubber meets the road, are we really able to release where other churches are in need? Number 4, he spent time with them. This is where the discipleship piece comes in. It is a great opportunity to see a lot of churches, and unfortunately, I see this all the time. And it breaks my heart. Let me ask this question. Are we only making Sunday happen? It's the only FaceTime we get with the people that we're asking to pull things off and be a part of this movement of what God has called us on, the hands and feet, if you will. It's the only time we have FaceTime with them on Sundays or when our gatherings are. Obviously, my lean is creative and worship arts, that kind of stuff, and more churches getting together on Sunday morning, making it happen. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I think technology has come a long ways and it prepares us. I mean, I could go and lead a conference in California probably next week, show up and be prepared because of technology. But we're missing a great opportunity. And so I just want to ask a few questions out of that. He spent time with, are you journeying with those people who are serving, or faithfully serving? Are we disciplining those within our volunteer cultures? Are we just plugging them into spaces where there is a need? To pull off our gatherings and our services. I believe this, when someone raises a hand to volunteer, they are raising the hand and say, disciple me. They don't know it, but they're saying disciple me. Why? Because they're taking more of a step into the inner circle. And are we equipping our leaders to disciple them? Lead pastors, speakers, communicators. Here's some practical things that you can do. One of the things, when you're doing your sermon prep, you're doing sermon series. In that sermon series, highlight some things. If you're doing a 4-week sermon series, what's the highlight of each one of those weeks? Pull that highlight out along with the scripture and ask 2 questions. And when the leaders gather with their volunteers, Sunday morning's fine, or other times, maybe you send an email out ahead of time. When they come in, they ask those 2 questions, and leaders, be quiet. Let them talk. Simple things. Are we creating space? Are we creating margin within our volunteer times when we're together? It's harder on Sunday mornings because you got that deadline. Creating margin is critical. Are we equipping our leaders to disciple in practical ways? Discipleship pastors in the room. What would it look like just to create a small curriculum with certain scriptures and questions, like I said before? Little things. Leaders, are we pushing our leaders to make monthly connections outside of Sunday mornings with our teams? We all have tasks that we have to done. We have titles that we have job descriptions, they have so many things. Especially in ministry, there's a lot of things that have to be done. But at the end of the day, God is calling us to reach people. And it's so easy to get our attention on the people that maybe be outside the doors. And that's great, but don't forget about the people that are serving with you. It's easy to do. I've done it. But I've also seen the fruit on the other side. When I took the intentionality of meeting with my people and asking tough questions. Lastly, he gave them power and authority. How are we honoring? How are we honoring our people? I love what Jerome said yesterday. Propel your sons and daughters. Are we honoring our people and our leaders and our volunteers publicly? You need to do that. Are we doing it personally? How are we showing them appreciation? How do we show them? Planning Center is a great tool. If you don't use it, you need to get it. It's a great tool. I'll ask Planning Center for a cut of this in a little while, but it's a great tool. Use it. One of the easiest things you can do in there is the people that are serving, find out when their birthdays are. Find out when their children's birthdays are. Anniversaries, important dates. Allow Planning Center to let you know when that's coming up and send a gift card. Easy things to do. Use the tools that have been created. And this is probably, again, coming from a executive pastor that's led me for many years. He used to push us every Monday morning to write handwritten cards. We were supposed to write 5 handwritten cards, and at that time I was serving close to 50, 60 people. He said, make sure you write a handwritten card every single Monday, at least 5. I didn't enjoy doing that because I analyzed every single word I'm writing. But I would always speak with my people at certain times, and I would just ask them, how's it going? How you doing? What's one of your favorite things about serving at Hope City? What's one thing that we can do better? And almost every time, I would get back. You don't know what those cards mean. Have a rough day? Go to the mailbox and a handwritten card from you. Help me. Took 2 minutes of my time, guys. We're used to going to the mailbox half the time. We don't even get mail much anymore, but if it is, it's all bills, right? Write some handwritten cards. It costs you a few cents and a little bit of your time. Let's stop hurting our people. Start loving them even more and more and more. And they will be champions for the vision that we've laid out before and that God has given us. So, that's my time. I mentioned yesterday the second E in the E team is called Educate. I like Equip, but I have a team around me that I get overruled, so I say Educate. One of those things is we do things like this, and usually they're like 4 hours, spots of time in the day where we just bring people out, experts to kind of give away information. Love to have you guys. If you want to be a part of our mailing list and know what all's coming around the corner, it's over there. Please give your name, email, and church. I'll be happy to get you on the email list so you can get all this content. But one of the things that's coming up at the end of this month, just want to personally invite you, and we got a promo video we're going to show. Every one of these events that we do come from sitting down with pastors and asking for it. Working on one right now for children. Session 1 will be an hour session to speak about foster care. In every city, every county, every state, there's more children than families to take them. The second part of that is how do we minister for special needs children and families? Tough, right? It's a tough one. It's only growing. Those are just, we do a lot of other stuff too. So if you're interested in that, but we talk about the one coming up real quick. It's going to be a worship summit. It's going to be called Fundamentals. It's going to be a 2-day thing. Normally we don't do them this long, but it's a Friday, Saturday. If you're a worship pastor, technical director, any of that, I want to encourage you to come. We're going to be talking about, we're not going to talk about, when it comes to technical stuff, we're not talking about EQ, compression, all that stuff. When it comes to worship leading, we're not talking about how to use Ableton and backing tracks and all that kind of stuff. Getting back to the basics, the fundamentals. What makes someone great over someone good is they do the little things well. And we forget about that a lot of times. So I just want to invite you. Thank you guys for your attention. I appreciate it.